What's up, everyone? A couple days overdue on this video, but I wanted to address the amazingness that is the Spitfire that just came out a couple days ago for DCS. Pretty awesome. Also a very different excuse me, very different machine from what we're used to, and I'll get into that here probably in another video. But right now, I just want to talk about taking off and landing the thing. Pretty different, as you'll notice. Narrow track landing gear, sort of like the BF-109, which makes it a little harder to mess with on the ground, and a free castering tail wheel, which means that you can't steer it on the ground without using the other quirk, which is this stick-mounted brake system powered by pneumatics, as you can see here. Just like the MiGs and the L39, you hit the brakes with the stick here, and then apply rudder in the direction you want to turn to use differential braking. So that's how you steer it on the ground. I'm not a huge fan of that system, but whatever, it's what we got. And let's try taking it off. Now, similar to the German fighters, since you don't really have steerable tail wheel to help you keep you in line on the runway, it's really critical that you have it lined up really well first. And also, what I like to do is use a lot of power really quickly, to have a high airspeed over your tail so you can start steering it with a rudder. So let's do that. Also, you should be using right rudder trim, which I forgot to do. As you notice, my right side's picking up. Yikes. Yeah. Now, it does like to fly and have a lot of lift with his wing, so thankfully your takeoff run should be pretty short. Landing gear up. Of note about that landing gear, they're right in front of the radiator inlets. So if you fly around with your gear down too long, you risk spiking your heat. That's not good, obviously. So you'll notice I'm going to turn on the gun sight here, and I'm going to hold the stick straight and low. Hold the stick at constant input. Right now, I'm not doing anything with the stick, just holding it. You notice the plane kind of does this porpoising, moving around behavior similar to what you're probably used to with the BF-109. It's less stable but more agile, so you got to deal with that. Now that becomes a problem when you come into when you do your flare and your landing. Because you need to have such fine control over your pitch, your descent rate, and stuff like that when you go to touchdown, it makes it a bit more of a challenge. And once you do that, assuming you get a good touchdown, you want to make sure you're perfectly in line with the runway, because as you lose speed, you lose rudder authority. And you do not want to be in a position where you're using that brake system to keep your nose on the runway. You're risking a nose over, you're risking a ground loop. It's just, or more likely, I haven't ground looped it yet, but I have smashed the wings into the ground. It likes to roll over. Alright, gear down, flaps down. Prop RPM up, chop the throttle back, because I am too damn fast. Overshot the runway because I was too busy yapping, so I may be a little quiet here in the descent. Yeah, those final moments right before touchdown are pretty critical. So, I haven't quite got a feel of it yet. Most of my touchdowns without recording have been pretty damn smooth, but the instant I turn on the camera and start making a video, of course I start to make mistakes. So, let's see how this one goes. Alright. Easy does it. I still have rudder authority, so I'm giving it right rudder to keep it lined up, hopefully. And as you come to a stop, that's when things really want to tip over, so you got to be really careful. Stay active on the rudder pedals, kind of lightly dance on them. Keep the stick back to keep the tail planted. And there we go. Not so bad, huh? Finally, easily put on the brakes and come to a stop. You'll notice too that right as I was about to touch the ground, I retracted the flaps. Now, I don't think that's a realistic thing to do, but it is kind of a trick I've used in DCS to prevent from ballooning. If I know I need to hit the ground, I'm about to touch down, I'll retract the flaps to kind of reduce my lift, which will help keep me on the ground a little bit. So that's it. Gear up. And now we're flying, which is what the Spitfire wants to do. Like they keep saying, loves to fly, loves the sky, hates the ground. Well, let's use that as an example of what not to do. Okay, a couple of things I'll mention right before I end the video. We're going to move on to combat here, hopefully in the next few videos. But first off, if you're coming from the Mustang, and I assume if you're interested in the Spitfire, that's probably where you're coming from. At least in DCS. Couple things of note. Most notably, the ground handling and the landing and takeoff are a lot more tricky, and you know, you're gonna crash. Don't worry about it. Just practice until you get good, just like anything else. The other thing is, even though we have the same Merlin engine more or less, in the Spitfire I have lost more planes to engine overheats than to enemy fire. And if you want to watch this little green temperature gauge down here, which I wish was here where the voltmeter is. I wish they would flip these back and forth, but you know, we can't have what we want all the time. This thing will overheat and nothing flat, so I think it has something to do with a radiator design. If you crank up the RPM, watch that temperature gauge, it'll spike real quick. So you have to be really judicious with your throttle. You cannot abuse this engine. You can't really run it too hard. Let's say if you're chasing a BF-109K up into the stratosphere, you can only really, you can give him a run for his money, but if you can't make the kill real quick, you may want to watch it. Watch how that needle's moving. Once it gets up to like 150, you're going to blow a head gasket. You'll see white smoke puffing out. So that is of note. Another thing, a couple challenges, kind of limitations of the aircraft. Just a heads up. First off, visibility to the rear is quite good, better than I expected, but visibility up front is not that great. We've got this huge frame. I've lost a few targets. Let's say you spot a Focke-Wulf down here somewhere and you want to roll in on him. Well, as you do that, you know, you want to do it quickly, keep your eyes on him, because you can get lost behind the framework pretty easily. The other thing, let's talk weaponry. We've got 4 303 machine guns, 2 20mm cannon, You can fire them all at once thus, which is pretty cool. But the 303s don't do much damage, so get ready for that. You're going to want to rely on the cannon more. Second, the gun sight itself is not lead computing, so you're going to have to figure out how to use deflection shooting kind of like intuitively, get a lot of practice in, or just get in real close and light up your target. Another problem I've had is that if you're trying to pull lead on a target, and say you're trying to saddle up on him and you're in a turn like this, it's really easy for him to get lost below the nose. You can lean forward a little bit, but that long nose on the Spitfire is really going to block your view quite a bit. You'll notice when you're in a dogfight. It's again, another solution is just to zoom in real close on the target's tail and light them up at zero deflection angle. But we can't always do that, so you're going to have to kind of practice a lot. I know I need to kind of get a feel for shooting targets that you may not necessarily be able to see. Or use snapshots. Put your gun sight in front of them, start firing, and have them fly through the bullets. But really, this particular brand of Spitfire doesn't have the knockout punch to really be able to do that. So I haven't quite figured out the gunnery solution yet. Another thing, again, if you're transitioning from the Mustang, it's got a better climb rate. So you can chase those 109s, just not forever. And you'll notice this thing turns on a dime. Just hauls around, just look at that. That turn radius is nothing. The turn rate is amazing. So angles fight. You're gonna have a lot more options in that respect. Roll rate is pretty good. But another thing, because of the high turn rate, you can pull a lot of G. And what I've noticed, especially in a diving spiral, trying to chase a fog wolf or something like that, as he heads for the deck, it's really easy for you to to black out. Of course, I can't do it here in the video because everybody's watching. But yeah, you can black your pilot out. And of course, the AI doesn't black out, so that's a trick that they do for some reason. They can just point the nose of the deck and do this spiral and pull 12 Gs indefinitely and not lose consciousness. You will, so be aware. Another thing is, the wings, the structure of the aircraft compared to the Mustang isn't quite as strong. So diving, pulling high G, and all that stuff, they take its toll. And I've ripped my wings off a few times in a dogfight. So it's a strong airframe, but not as strong as the Mustang. So just be nice to it. I've heard somebody say somewhere that when you're flying the Spitfire, you need silk hands, which they've done a good job at emphasizing here in DCS, because you can't just go yanking on the stick. It'll turn on a dime, but if you go too far, you get stuff like this. Stalls, it's a gentle stall, but it does come on. You don't want to do that while you're trying to fight somebody. So especially on the pitch axis, you really need to be light on the controls. But you'll get used to it. I mean, the challenge of learning new things is what brings us all to DCS. At least it's what keeps me coming back. Alright. Again, thanks for watching. You gotta pay constant attention to that pitch, I gotta tell you. It's very squirrely. Anyway, again, thanks for watching. I know this wasn't a super exciting video with no combat, but those are on the way. I'll see you soon.